Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Tuesday, dear viewer. Welcome to Vuka Nazo, the morning show here on the Big Daddy Liberty Show. My name is Sihle Gobese, aka Big Daddy Liberty. As always, if you want to get in touch with us here on the BDL show, do me a solid favor and find me, of course, on my website at www.bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also look to support the show financially. People are contributing as little as R100 to 150 a month, and trust you me, it goes a long way in hiring editors and hopefully correspondents who can help grow the show. With that being said, enough with the jibber jabber. Let's get straight into the game. All right, we begin here this morning. We're in the East London Magistrates Court. The case that is one of the reckless firing of a firearm against Julius Malema. You'll remember that case was brought forward, of course, by the fellas over at AfriForum. Well, that case was postponed yet again, this time over a frivolous reason, such as their, or in this case, Malema's counsel or lawyer not being available, which begs the question, how, given that these dates were set all the way back in the previous appearance. But don't take it from me. Let's have a quick listen at the community safety, spokesperson at AfriForum, Jacques Brutrek, as he gives a breakdown of what exactly happened and what led to that postponement.
The case was postponed today because Mr. Malema's senior counsel was not available, which is quite concerning, seeing as these dates were proclaimed by a court of law months ago already. And it's just interesting that Mr. Malema is in a position where he can organize postponements with the court without appearing in court. It's a type of privilege that I'm pretty sure the ordinary citizen wouldn't have easily been afforded. Once a court has decided when your next appearance should be, that is when you need to appear in court. So it's an interesting case, and unfortunately, it does seem to appear that there's a pattern where Mr. Malema seems to get preferential treatment in some regards when it pertains to court cases. And we have to remember that this is a very important case. Someone could have very easily have been injured or killed because of Mr. Malema's reckless actions, and it's not something to be taken up lightly. And this is something that I've stated numerous times, but I'll say it again. If it was you or I or anyone else who would have been caught on video performing such a reckless act and encroaching on the Firearms Control Act in the manner that Mr. Malema did, by this time we would have probably already finished spending our time in prison, where in Mr. Malema's case, we're still trying to get him to finish his court case.
All right, there you have it, folks. From the horse's mouth, or in this case, from Jacques Brutrek's mouth, who, of course, is the community safety spokesperson at AfriForum. And I think he raises an important issue, and that is on this particular matter, both in terms of the content of the court case, and indeed right now, as things stand, the court case of itself. The question being, is there equality before the law? Do the courts treat the politically elites, the politicians, the hoofty of our society in the exact same way as they would treat you or me, the ordinary faith, flag, family, and freedom type South African? Now, let me address the content of the actual case, which is, of course, the allegation that Julius Malema fired a rifle into a packed stand, or rather into a packed audience of people at a particular political rally they were hosting. Again, don't take it from me. Watch this clip as a reminder of exactly what happened. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what he did. And I have to use the word allegedly just for legal reasons. But otherwise, you saw in that video clip exactly what he is alleged to have done, and indeed is now facing, or should be facing, the music in court on that particular charge. The issue then becomes, on the content, will this be another one of those cases where legal technicalities get in the way of someone who clearly on video is caught breaking the law, getting away with it, or will he actually face justice? And is there a justice system that actually recognizes equality for everybody? Because Jacques is right in making the point that had that been me or any other ordinary law-abiding citizen, the faith, flag, family, or freedom type citizen, we would have been in prison so fast our heads would have literally spun. And then on the other issue, aside from the content of the case itself, the criminal case itself, how is it possible that his lawyer and Julius Malema, on the one hand, simply don't show up, or B, given a court date, his is postponed off of in what I would consider a relatively frivolous reason, and one which is actually begs the question, could my lawyer get away with something like that if I had even had a lawyer? But anyway, or could your representative get away with that? The question being, of course, is there a different set of rules for the elites in this country versus the ordinary citizen? That's the question I think pervades my mind when I read this particular matter or saw this matter coming out from the boys at AfriForum. And again, we'll keep an eye on this particular case because it will have massive implications for the justice system in this country. All right, I take you to Johannesburg now, of course, where a little bit of feedback from that story that we did the last time about a one Vasco da Gama. Yes, I still find that name insanely hilarious, given who Vasco da Gama is in history. But Vasco da Gama, of course, the former speaker of the Johannesburg Council. Vasco, of course, a DA councillor, ousted rather unceremoniously after his opposition, that's the the ANC, EFF, and the PAC, effectively led a motion of no confidence, which, and here's the kicker, members of his own coalition in the Johannesburg Council also supported, and which effectively then saw the ousting of the Gama. That same gaggle of politicians in the opposition, and perhaps even supported by some of the coalition members, they now have the mayor of the Johannesburg Metro in their sights, a one Dr. Phalatse, of course, who is a DA councillor, but also the mayor of a coalition government in the Johannesburg Metro. She's now in the crosshairs of this of these opposition parties looking to oust her. Some of the reasons, of course, these opposition parties are citing for why they want to oust her after they successfully removed the Gama are as follows, and I'll read from EWN in this regard. At the media briefing addressed by the minority parties in Johannesburg, Phalatse, that's the mayor, was also accused of failing to serve the needs of the residents of the metro. The ANC, of course, was the first to call for the removal of Phalatse last week after Gama, the former speaker, was kicked out of the speaker's office following a motion of no confidence against him. You remember, of course, that motion was brought forward by the PAC. He was accused of having appointed a secretary in council and concealing the details of that appointment. End of quote. Now, again, I'll conclude by saying this. For those of you who were hoping that coalition governments would be the stock standard after 2024, in the hopes that they perhaps would offer an alternative to the ANC, firstly by getting rid of the ANC, and then offering alternative to the ANC, well, your hopes perhaps will be a little bit dashed if you look at how coalition governments are behaving and operating now, where on the one hand they are threatened by the internal factions and fractious behavior of actual political parties. COPE is a good example.
The ANC is not going to come through the back door. The ANC will come through the front door exactly the same way that the DA came through the front door and Action SA came through the front door.
And then, of course, the relations between these political parties that are in coalition themselves being just as fraught with conflict, name-calling, and even pettish behavior. I mean, look at the battle, for instance, between the DA and Action SA. I mean, the sort of rancor and petty name-calling that sometimes emanates from these two parties simply doesn't bode well for those of you who were hoping that 2024 would be the year, the election year, that the ANC is finally ousted from power. Because even if it is ousted, what will that coalition government perhaps look like post the election? Will we see the same amount of instability as we're seeing right now? These are the questions people are asking themselves now as perhaps hope begins to wane for politics in this country. All right, from Joburg, I take you to Cape Town now, as that city has it not been a war zone as of late? You'll remember last week we covered, yesterday rather, we covered the issue of the Amapela, the cockroach taxi operators, the illegal taxi operators out in Nyanga, having waged war against the city of Cape Town and the residents of Nyanga, torching buses, torching, parts of a Nyanga clinic, and engaging in a wanton campaign of violence and the disregard for human life, including, of course, torching police vehicles, attacking and torching police vehicles. While that violence seemingly has not dissipated, even after those taxi operators, the police, and of course the city met over the weekend to try and resolve and iron out these issues. Another taxi association, this time perhaps out in Hout Bay, deciding hell, it too can embark on similar behavior, where a My City bus has been torched along with other infrastructure in the area, as protesters, including some community members, stoned cars and buses in that part of the world, allegedly over grievances with route permits that the city had been negotiating and issuing out in that part of the world. The piece I read this in, of course, was in News 24, which gave a little bit of detail as to what was happening and the violence and chaos in that part of Cape Town. My City bus and, of course, a dial-a-ride service to Hout Bay, dial-a-ride, of course, being a service that caters to people with physical disabilities, have been suspended amid the protest action in the area. According to the ward councillor there, one Rob Quintas, violence flared up when the private vehicles and the My City bus were stoned. The protest action, of course, according to police spokesperson Wesley Twigg, started on Monday at around 7 in the morning, and added that the protest appeared to be transport related, end of quote. Now, again, it does seem to be that taxi operators, and indeed, I'm going to put the alleged taxi operators in front of this just for legal purposes, have pretty much figured out that the route to getting what they want, as is a route that most other people take when protests happen, more like riots, violent riots happen, is to literally target the state and other residents, inconvenience and place at risk and place at danger other residents, as you saw last week with the Nyanga Amapela cockroach taxi illegal operators in that part of the world. I think a recognition by them that if they use ordinary law-abiding citizens and other public infrastructure as human shields for their behavior and embark on a wanton campaign of violence and indeed injuring and possibly even killing people, that is the sure route that they get what they want. That, to me, speaks to a complete breakdown in the rule of law. And there is an urgent need from the City of Cape Town and, of course, the South African Police Service, albeit it's headed politically by that asshat of a police minister. But nonetheless, law enforcement in this country needs to get its act together and stamp out this sort of criminality so that it never rears its head again. Other than that, we'll continue to see the scenes that we're seeing in now Hout Bay, that we saw in Nyanga, and indeed in other parts of this country. All right, that's it from me today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Vuka Nazo. Remember, we come to you weekdays from 7 a.m. You'll find us mostly, of course, on our Facebook page and on YouTube. And speaking about YouTube, do me a solid favor, will you? Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so that you're notified every time the show is up. And of course, like our content. If you want to get in touch with Mina Usihle Ngobese, find me on my website. Go to www.bigdaddyliberty.com. And all of our social media information is in the descriptor of this video. With that being said, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow on Vuka Nazo.